This evening, we are going to talk about the power of a plant-based diet. And I would like to share the outline with you. This is actually 2 lectures, and I usually do it in 1 lecture, but it takes a long time, an hour and a half, so I decided to divide it into 2 for this month and next month. We're going to talk about what happens when you put heart disease on a plant-based diet, or stroke and Alzheimer's when you put them on a plant-based diet. What happens to hypertension, diabetes? So those are the topics we'll talk about today. And then how do you get the motivation to follow a plant-based diet? Picture yourself in the emergency room next to a family member who had just had a heart attack. As you're standing there hoping, praying that he or she will survive, you ask yourself, why did he get a heart attack? What could he have done to prevent it? Maybe he should have had a healthier diet. Maybe he should have had less stress. Maybe he was working too hard, and perhaps he needed more vacations. Do you know that the top 10 causes of death in the United States are here as follows? The first one, what is the top cause of death in our country? It's the bottom one, the long bar, heart disease. 647,000 people die from heart disease every year. And then right second is cancer, accident, COPD, stroke, Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, influenza, and pneumonia, and then suicide. You know what is interesting about these statistics? 7 out of these 10 diseases are related to diet and lifestyle. So according to research, 70% of our diseases are lifestyle diseases, and they could be prevented if we took better care of ourselves. So that's why we're here tonight. So we want to learn how to take better care of ourselves and not get these diseases, or if we have them, hopefully to improve the situation. Do any of you recognize these 2 men? One of them on the left, he's a filmmaker. His name is John Singleton. He's 51 years old here. The one on the right is actor Luke Perry. He's 52 years old. You know, the interesting thing about both of them is that they both died this year at 50 years of age. Isn't that too young to die for someone to die from a stroke? I think so, definitely. You know, I talk to many people, and many people think the way we live and the way we die is programmed in our genes. I don't know if you believe that or not. I've heard people say, I have bad genes. Dad had high blood pressure by 55. He had heart disease by 60. And Mom had cancer at 70. So I'm going to get them too. Is that true? Do we have to get the diseases of our parents? No. Wow, you're a smart group. You're right, we don't. Let's find out why. Research shows that for most of the leading causes of death, science shows that our genes often account for only 10 to 20% of the risk. In other words, most of the causes of death are caused by 10 or 20% by our genes. The rest is lifestyle. So there's a famous saying in the scientific community, genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. So if we have a bad lifestyle, we are pulling a trigger to die early. Do you want to do that? No. I don't think so. That's why we're eager to share this information with you, so that you can conscientiously make the right decision for your health and take charge of your health, and not just let circumstances take charge of you. You know, Instead of blaming our genes, instead of blaming our environment, let's take personal responsibility. And this is what Dr. Joseph Califano told us to do. He is the former Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare for the United States. And I love this quote: "You, the individual, can do more for your health and well-being than any doctor, any hospital, any drug, and any exotic medical device." Isn't this empowering? You can do more for your health than any of these things, than any vitamin, than any gadget, than any drug, by changing your lifestyle. There was an article in Wall Street Journal on June 22nd of this year, and the title was "America's Top Killer Makes a Deadly Comeback," and it's heart disease. We were conquering heart disease and we were doing very, very well, but suddenly heart disease is on the rise. And let's find out why. We realize that, like I showed you, the number one reason we will lose our loved ones is to heart disease. Each minute, one or more person in the United States dies of heart disease. Each minute, as I'm talking right now, that's 1,736 deaths every day. What if that person was your friend? What if that person was a loved one? What if it was you? Think of a loved one who has suffered for years that chest pain and shortness of breath before finally they had a heart attack. It doesn't have to be that way. You can do something now. Dr. Stephen Nissen, chair of cardiovascular medicine at the Cleveland Clinic, says, "Now the cardiac patients are younger, more obese, much less likely to be smokers, and include more women. Especially women in their 50s. Like I told you, men in their 50s are dying from stroke. Well, women in their 50s are getting heart attacks. And other cardiologists say they have men in their 30s come with a heart attack. So let's talk about atherosclerosis. Atherosclerosis is the hardening of the arteries, and that disease begins in childhood. Did you know that by the age of 10 years old, and I hope the young people are listening, anyone 10 years and up, by the time you're 10 years old, nearly all the arteries of kids raised on the SAD American diet, which stands for Standard American Diet, have fatty streaks. This is the first stage of heart disease, but by age 10, most of the kids. So when they get to their 20s, plaque forms in our 20s. It gets worse in our 30s, and then it starts killing us all off. If plaque breaks off and blocks an artery to your heart, it's called a heart attack. And if a plaque breaks off and clogs an artery to your brain, it is called a stroke. So here you see is a cross-section of the right coronary artery of a male who died in a cardiac ICU. Do you know how old he was? 34. 34 years of age. So, what causes heart disease? Dr. Roberts, he is the editor-in-chief of the American Journal of Cardiology. He has written thousands of papers on heart disease. He says the only risk factor for atherosclerotic plaque buildup is cholesterol, LDL cholesterol in your blood, the bad cholesterol in your blood. In fact, he says it's the cholesterol stupid. Because people aren't getting it. That was the title of his scientific article. It's the cholesterol stupid. Notice what is going through those arteries here. Can you see what kind of food is going through? It's just a picture, but it gives you an idea what's clogging up the arteries. The pizza with what do you call that? Ham, pepperoni pizza, hamburger, fried chicken, yeah, hot dogs. That's where the cholesterol is. That's where the saturated fat is. And I'll show you a little later. So this is what he says. And write these numbers down because this is very important when you go to the doctor and have your cholesterol checked. These are the ideal numbers if you want to prevent a heart attack. Your ideal total blood cholesterol should be under 150 milligrams. Your LDL bad cholesterol should be under 70 milligrams. However, if your cholesterol is 200, you know what the doctor will tell you? Oh, you have normal cholesterol. Because if you look on the lab sheet, it says cholesterol of 200 is normal. It is normal in a country such as America where heart disease is #1 killer. Do you want to be normal and be dying of heart disease? No. Therefore, we want to have total cholesterol of 150 or less, LDL cholesterol, bad cholesterol under 70. So let's look at where can we find cholesterol. Look at this interesting graph. Do you see any cholesterol in whole foods like fruits, grains, legumes, nuts, and vegetables? How much cholesterol is there? Zero. Don't you love it when you go grocery shopping and you're buying cereal, you know, some nice healthy cereal like granola, and they'll say 0 cholesterol. It's just a gimmick because whole grains don't have any cholesterol. None of these foods do. However, as soon as you start adding milk and all the animal products, it starts climbing. Notice one large egg has 213, and the recommendation is to limit your cholesterol to 200 milligrams per day. So if you eat a piece of chicken, no skin, you'll get another 72. If you have tuna, another 25. It all adds up, a little bit of milk. So it's way above what your body needs. And then shrimp is very high. Beef liver and beef brains are 1,747 milligrams of cholesterol. So that's something you never want to have. So to drastically reduce your LDL cholesterol, you need to drastically reduce 3 things. One of them is saturated fat. A second thing is trans fat. And the third thing is the cholesterol itself that we talked about. So where do you find saturated fats? Saturated fats, the way you can identify them, they are hard at room temperature. Okay? So even coconut, a lot of people are saying coconut is so good for you, but if you have high cholesterol, you shouldn't be eating coconut milk or having coconut because it's when you open the can of coconut milk on the top, it's hard. It's hard at room temperature because it's saturated. Okay, so tell me what are some foods that are high in saturated fats? What do you see there?
Chicken.
Chicken. Eggs. Steak, beef, yes. Pork chops. And how about cheese? That's a biggie. Right. And of course, ice cream isn't there. I couldn't put everything. And butter, and sausage, and roast beef, and so on and so forth. So those are the fats that clog your arteries. Then we have trans fats, which are not generally recognized as safe for use in human food. And the government is taking them out of our food supply. And if you look at a label, even though it says it has 0 trans fats, however, if you see the word partially hydrogenated vegetable oil or hydrogenated vegetable oil, it's guaranteed it has trans fats. And you really shouldn't have it because it is not good for your arteries. Can you imagine that if we cut out trans fats from our diet, we could prevent 20,000 heart attacks a year, 7,000 deaths from heart disease each year? Did you know that also eating too many oils, vegetable oils, that causes cholesterol to build up in your arteries? So I use very little oil or sometimes no oil. And then smoking causes cholesterol to build up. So what do you need to do to become cholesterol-proof? This same doctor who was talking about cholesterol being the problem, he said you have two choices to make Americans heart attack proof. Number one, put 1 million Americans on a lifetime of meds like lovastatin and other cholesterol-lowering drugs, or recommend that they all eat a diet centered around whole foods. Which one would you rather do? Would you do the drugs? And let me tell you about the drugs. Statin drug risks. They have potential for liver or muscle damage, memory loss, and confusion. You have an increased risk for developing diabetes, and long-term use may double your risk of invasive breast cancer. That's a long list. So would you rather do that, or would you rather change your diet and go plant-based? Yes, I would. That's what I would do, because I want to live, and I want to not only live, but to have a good quality life. Now look at the diet on the right. I don't know if you can see all the little signs. This is basically, in summary, what a plant-based diet is. What do we have? What is the red circle? What does it tell us? Can't read it. Who can read it? Those of you who are up front, maybe. Fruit. 2 or more servings of fruit per day. And then right to the next of it, what does it say? Seeds and nuts. How many servings of seeds and nuts? 1 to 2 per day. And then vegetables, wow, that's a huge, it's almost a quarter of the plate. How many vegetables should we have? 4 or more servings. What about beans and lentils for protein and fiber? 3 or more. And then another third of what? What is that? The yellow.
Grains.
Yeah, these are whole grains. And starchy vegetables like your potatoes and your squash, butternut squash, and red potatoes, sweet potatoes, yeah. So those are the choices we have. I want to tell you now about the best kept secret in medicine. Do you know what it is? It is that given the right conditions, the body can heal itself. Given the right conditions, if you provide the right conditions for your body, it will be able to heal itself. How quickly? Let's find out. Here we have these 2 famous doctors, Dr. Dean Ornish and Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn Jr. They took patients with advanced heart disease and put them on a plant-based diet. These are patients whose arteries were maybe 90+% plugged with cholesterol and plaque. They put them on a plant-based diet. As soon as their patients stopped eating the artery plugging diet, which is the meat diet, their heart disease began to reverse. Plaque began to dissolve. Arteries opened up without drugs or surgery. Isn't that exciting? Now, and how quickly did that happen? It started to happen. There was a 91% in angina attacks in just a few weeks after they started following this diet. And Dr. Esselstyn, let me tell you what he puts his patients on. He puts them on a whole food plant-based diet. In other words, he tells his patients, go to the grocery store and get your foods from the fresh food section. Don't go and buy canned green beans and canned this and canned that. But whole foods. If you had a garden, which many of you did, I know this summer, you would go to your garden and you would pick whole foods, that kind of whole foods. And so he puts them whole foods, plant-based diet, no oil, no meat, skim milk and non-fat yogurt. He tells them to eat lots of fruits, lots of vegetables, whole grains, and beans. So that's his diet. And we had one of the people who attended here, he and his wife, he was following that diet. He was not even using nuts for a few years, but now his arteries are sparkling clean. It's very, very exciting to me. So the question is heart disease reversible? Yes, it is, on a strict plant-based diet. And it's been proven by Dr. Dean Ornish and Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn and others. Now, listen to this here. Some people think, some people say, oh, I can't go on a plant-based diet. That's extreme. That's too hard. I can't do this. Well, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn says, some people think the plant-based whole foods diet is extreme. 500,000 people a year will have their chests opened up and a vein taken from their leg and sewn onto their coronary artery. Some people would call that extreme. Which one would you rather do? I was asking my son, what's the name of this procedure? And he said it's called cabbage. It's bypass surgery, coronary artery bypass graft. That's what that procedure is called. So a plant-based diet has been shown to lower cholesterol just as effectively as statin drugs, but without risks. So what are some specific foods that help with heart disease? Here's a study done with nuts, nut consumption and heart disease. People who ate nuts 5 or more times a week had a 52% reduction in heart attacks, 48% reduction in deaths from heart attacks, compared to those who seldom eat nuts. And that's easy to do, a handful of nuts every day and chew them well. And you will protect yourself, but you have to also change the diet. You can't just keep on eating the unhealthy diet and just put a Band-Aid on it and put a little bit of nuts and that'll do, you know what I mean? You have to do the whole thing. So this study was done with Seventh-day Adventists on 26,000 people. And it was proven that this works. And it's such a small and simple decision to eat nuts, but you can cut your heart disease in half. Here's another nut. I was in Brazil, and they grow Brazil nuts. So I bought 5 pounds of Brazil nuts in Brazil. And this study is very, very interesting. It was done on 20 men and 20 women, 20 men and women, and they gave them 1 to 8 Brazil nuts to eat. Now, Brazil nuts are very strong and rich, so that's a lot of nuts. If you have 1, you have had enough. After 9 hours, their LDL, or bad cholesterol, was lowered by 20 points compared to controls. Did you understand that? Eating 1 to 8 Brazil nuts lowered cholesterol within 9 hours, that quickly. This is the power of a plant-based diet. And you know what happened? They retested their cholesterol a month later, and guess what happened? It was still low. From those nuts they ate a month before, their cholesterol was still low with the Brazil nuts. Now, don't you all go home now and eat 8 Brazil nuts tomorrow morning. It's high in selenium, so only 1 Brazil nut per week. You can have 4 Brazil nuts per month. But they do work. Let's talk about a life without memories. Let's face it, a life without memories is not much of a life. Whether those memories are lost instantly from a massive stroke, or chipped away by mini strokes, or destroyed by diseases like Alzheimer's. The key is to start early. High cholesterol and high blood pressure may begin hurting your brain as early as your 20s. So stroke, we're going to talk about stroke and Alzheimer. They're both brain diseases. Stroke is caused by ruptured plaques in the artery, which cut off blood flow to the brain. And Alzheimer's is a slower disease. It takes many months and years to develop, but plaques form in the brain which cause loss of memory and life. How do we protect ourselves? One thing we can do is eat more fiber. We're not sure exactly how fiber protects us from getting a stroke. However, we do know that fiber lowers cholesterol, it lowers our blood sugar, which reduces the plaque in our blood vessels of the brain. So where do we find fiber? Fruits, vegetables, very good. Is there any fiber in processed foods? Not much. A little bit, you know.
How much is 45 grams of fiber?
Okay, I will tell you. Yeah, it's a good point. Maybe next time I'll bring a little chart. But basically, animal foods have zero, a big zero fiber, unless you eat the package that the chicken was in. So the problem with us in America, 97% of Americans don't get enough fiber. So we're not eating enough fiber. But if we would increase our fiber by 7 grams a day, we could reduce our stroke risk by 7%. Let's say we increase it by 14 grams or 21 grams. That would climb up, right? It would be so much better. So how do you get 7 grams of fiber? You get 7 grams of fiber by eating just a half a cup of beans a day, okay? And of course, I wouldn't stop at half a cup. I would eat 1. Or by eating 2 slices of 100% whole wheat bread, or by eating a cup of brown rice. So to minimize the stroke, we really need to increase our grams of fiber. And you don't really have to measure it. That other plate that I showed you, if you eat 4 to 5 vegetables a day and you eat 5 whole grains and starchy vegetables and beans, you get it. You'll get it. You make sure you include it at every meal. So in the morning, instead of having, you know, I used to like to eat dry cereals, but not anymore. They're just so artificial, you know, unless you get some really healthy one. But even those, you don't get as much fiber as if you would cook your own oats, okay, or if you would cook your own millet or your own quinoa or something like that. So you can get a lot for breakfast just by eating whole grain cereals. Berries have a lot of fiber, oats, nuts, beans, brown rice, of course. How many parents do we have here? Okay. How about grandparents? Yeah. Quite a few. How many of you are aunts or uncles? Yeah, it includes all of us, right? One way or another. This is very interesting research here. Eating foods, antioxidants are foods that are very good for preventing strokes and Alzheimer's. Eating foods high in antioxidants may help prevent strokes by preventing the circulation of oxidized fats in the bloodstream, which can damage the small, tiny blood vessels in the brain. Do you know how much antioxidants are found in plant foods? 64 times more than in animal foods. So when we eat whole plant foods, we're really just multiplying our antioxidants over and over again. Now I ask, how many of you are parents, grandparents? Most of you in this room. This is a very interesting study. Hundreds of children were studied here. They followed them for 24 years, from junior high school to 24 years of age. And they found out that as children, if they ate a low fiber intake, their arteries were stiffening up that were leading to the brain. Can you imagine starting with children? By age 14, there was a clear difference in the arterial health among those children who are young people who are eating low and high fiber diets. So, what is the lesson? Teach your children and grandchildren and whoever children you have around to eat vegetables, to eat whole wheat bread, to eat beans every day. Encourage them, come on, have one more apple, have half an orange, a quarter cup of broccoli. Come on, you can do it. This is good for you. This is good for your body. Make it fun. Make it good. Model healthy eating. Because later on, it's going to affect them, their health. I'll tell you a story. When my two sons were younger, I did that. I was in my master's program on nutrition, and whatever I was learning, I was implementing and giving them lots of vegetables and everything that is good and healthy. And of course, you know, they didn't like vegetables. They didn't know I didn't like them either. I always loved fruit. Vegetables were not my forte. But anyway, I just kept on saying, you've got to eat your broccoli, you've got to eat your potatoes, and you've got to eat those beans. And they're trying to sneak things and put them under the rug or whatever. You know how kids do. And but the reward came. The reward came about 10 years later, no, even 12, 13 years later, when we moved to Virginia. You know, I heard it from one first, then from the other. Mom, I'm so glad you taught us to eat healthy. You know, broccoli and vegetables and beans and everything. We see some of these children, and they're eating just white, you know, pasta. They don't have vegetables on their plate. You did a good thing. So they're really encouraging me. It made me feel good. And it made me realize how important this is. Because you know what? I don't know about you, but when I go grocery shopping to Kroger, the cashiers don't know the names of the vegetables. Have you noticed that? They'll go, what's this? Oh, they don't know the names of the fruits. And it's not, the young people don't know it, but the older people don't know it either. So that tells you something, doesn't it? I mean, that's why I try to give them my flyers. They're like, thank you, ma'am, but they never show up here. So I try at least. But encourage the young people that you're working with or that you know to eat healthy. Yeah. So stroke and potassium. Every cell in our body needs potassium. Less than 2% of the Americans reach the recommended amount. Why? We don't eat enough plant foods. So, if we could increase our potassium by just 1,650 milligrams per day, we would reduce stroke by 21%. And what are the sources of vegetables? What do you see here? Green leafy, sweet potatoes, beans. Beans are good sources of potassium. And cantaloupes, bananas, peaches, those are some of the main ones. Would you like to know how to cut Alzheimer's in half? Everyone's afraid of getting Alzheimer's, but there's a way to cut it in half. The researchers found that the greatest correlation between Alzheimer's disease was animal fat. That means the more animal fat we consume, we're more likely to get Alzheimer's disease. So, what happened in our country between 1951 and 2008, our animal fat consumption increased by 600%. So here we have, where do you think is the lowest rate of Alzheimer's in the world? Rural India. They eat a plant-based diet. And here comes what you said. This is one of the Loma Linda studies. In the United States, in Loma Linda, people who don't eat meat, poultry, or fish appear to cut their risk of developing dementia in half. And dementia risk in people who have consumed vegetarian diets for 30 years or more is 3 times lower. In other words, the longer you're a vegetarian, the greater the benefit. So there are a lot of good blessings here. So Dr. Greger says dementia is more a lifestyle disease than of genetics. No wonder that the 2014 Dietary and Lifestyle Guidelines for the Prevention of Alzheimer's Disease state vegetables, legumes, fruits, and whole grains should replace meats and dairy products as a primary staple in the diet. Let's talk about brain foods. We have special antioxidant pigments in berries, in dark green leafy vegetables, and they're brain foods. Blueberries improve memory, I'm sure you've heard. Women who had 1 serving or blueberries or berries per week slowed their cognitive decline by 1.5 years. Eating half a cup of green veggies a day slows your brain aging by 2 years. And then we have Concord grape juice or Concord grapes. Do you know what that is good for?
Is it mostly heart disease?
Heart disease, yes. The resveratrol. It actually improves the performance of daily tasks. People who drink this juice have a quicker response time when they're driving, when they have driving tests. So your brain acts really, really quick. And another study showed that people who drink fruit and veggie juices have a 76% lower risk of Alzheimer's. Fruit and vegetable juices. Now, these are not the ones we're talking that you buy in the supermarket. These would be ones that you would, make fresh. Or I prefer to eat the food instead of making juices, but once in a while, it's good to do that, go on a juice cleanse. How many people die from eating too much salt? 9 million people worldwide die from eating too much salt. Why so many? Because high blood pressure contributes to the death of heart attacks, heart failure, aneurysm, kidney failure, and stroke. And do you know that as we get older, our blood pressure gets higher? Like, even if your blood pressure is normal now, as you get older, it will most likely get higher. So we need to do all we can to prevent it. Now, this is an interesting study done in Kenya. They took 1,800 patients in a rural Kenyan hospital. And these people, you know how many of them had high blood pressure? Zero. 0 people had high blood pressure. You know how many had heart disease? 0. You know why? They only ate plants and vegetables and beans and whole grains, what we talked about. Oh, it's right there. Yes. So 1 in 3 Americans has hypertension. That's 78,000 million. But this study with 89,000 Seventh-day Adventists proved that hypertension can be reversed. Now, this study is very interesting. It was done among Seventh-day Adventists. Some of the Seventh-day Adventists, they eat meat. Others eat fish, and others eat dairy, and others are plant-based. They don't eat any meat, fish, or dairy. But notice what happens. Those who cut out meat but ate fish had a 38% lower blood pressure. Those who ate no meat and fish had a 55% lower blood pressure. They were vegetarians, okay? But those who cut out all meat, fish, eggs, and dairy had a 75% lower blood pressure. And they had a bonus on top of that. They were 30 pounds thinner than the others. Okay? But it's interesting. Seventh-day Adventists are interesting to study because even though those who eat meat and fish, they still eat a lot of fruit. They eat a lot of vegetables. They exercise. They don't smoke. So they're not like your average population. Where's the salt coming from? Well, all of these foods. Pizza is one of them, and children, that's the #1 food they like to eat. And did you know that one slice of pizza from Pizza Hut has enough sodium for half a day? That's how high it is. And then, of course, the chicken, the young people who are 20 to 25, they love to eat chicken. And guess what people who are 50 plus like to eat? Bread. And bread is high in sodium. It's high in sodium. So what do we have on the right-hand corner? What kind of foods are those? Yeah, processed and fast, right. What do we have on the right-hand corner? On the bottom? Processed and fat, and what do you call them? Processed meats, right? Right, processed meats, and then the rest we've talked about. So our body is designed to eat 10 times less salt than we eat. So the American Heart Association recommends we eat only 3/4 of a teaspoon per day, 1,500 milligrams. And the average American consumes 3,500 milligrams. So increasing our cooked and especially our raw vegetables will lower our blood pressure. Very, very important. So make sure you have a nice big raw salad every day, in addition to some cooked veggies. Let me tell you the story of this young lady. Her dad had triple bypass surgery. He had stents. He was on a defibrillator. He had chronic heart failure, diabetes. And mother had some other issues. I think she had cancer. And so she was following the lifestyle of her parents. She ate out. She had lots of meat, dairy, and oil. Then she watched the movie Forks Over Knives, the one we showed here some time ago, and she switched to a plant-based diet. And there she is. Look at her blood pressure. It dropped from 150/90 to 110/70. Her obesity went down. It says minus 23 kilograms. It really should be pounds.
It should be like
50 pounds, yeah. It's my Brazilian figures didn't change. She had high anxiety. Her anxiety went away. Her cholesterol dropped from 240 to 150. Remember, 150 is that good number we talked about earlier? Her C-reactive protein was very high. This C-reactive protein measures inflammation in the body. It became normal. Her resting heart rate was 90 plus. It came down to 60. You know what she said? How grateful I am I found this lifestyle at an early age. I look forward to a life of healthy eating and helping others. Do you know that all the people I talk to and meet who have changed their diet to a plant-based diet, they're on a mission. They're so happy what they found, they want to tell others, and they want to help others, and they want to teach others how to live better and how to live healthier. So here's another study, very easy thing to do. 3 servings of whole grains per day had the same blood pressure lowering effect as some medication. So this would be like 2 waffles, and maybe half a cup of brown rice, or 1 cup of brown rice and 1 piece of bread. Very simple. That's much better than medicine, isn't it? And tastier too. What other specific foods lower blood pressure? Hibiscus tea. Drinking 2 cups per day lowers blood pressure. Ground flaxseed, 2 to 3 tablespoons ground in a coffee grinder. It's very powerful in lowering your blood pressure. Nitrate-rich vegetables, I'll talk about that in a minute, and raw and cooked vegetables. Now, watermelon, how would you like to eat watermelon every day for the rest of your life to lower your blood pressure? I warn you, you'd have to eat 2 pounds a day, but it would work. 2 pounds a day. But you know what? When it's hot, I think it's pretty easy to do, to eat 2 pounds, don't you think? Okay. Let's talk about nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a key messenger in your body. It signals muscles within the artery walls to relax. Without nitric oxide, your arteries would stiffen and they would raise your blood pressure and increase your risk of a heart attack. So, vegetables high in nitrates can be converted to this nitric oxide. And one of these vegetables is beet juice. Half a cup of beet juice lowers systolic blood pressure by 10 points. That's amazing, isn't it? And you can squeeze some beet juice. Now you may say, you know what? I don't have a juicer and I'm lazy to juice every day for half a cup of beet juice. Well, guess what? These are the top sources of nitrates. Other vegetables. Which vegetable has the most?
Beets.
Beets? Okay, I need more votes here. Which vegetable has the most? Arugula is number 1. See, I tricked you. Arugula on the bottom is number 1. Arugula has 480 milligrams of nitrate per 100 grams, 4 times more than beets. If you go to some of these markets, even Kroger has it on Orange Street, they have it, or that Fresh Market, some of those places have arugula, or you can grow it in your garden. Do you grow it in your garden? There you go. So, you know what's the easiest way to get your nitrate fix for the day? Eat a big salad every day. And not just one kind of lettuce, but mix and match, okay? Beet greens, rhubarb, Swiss chard, butterleaf lettuce, whatever. Okay. We're going to talk about type 2 diabetes. 30 million Americans, or 9% of the US population, has diabetes. 84 million have prediabetes. That's the bad news. Now, what's the good news? Let's see. The good news is diabetes is almost always preventable. Diabetes type 2, not type 1. It's almost always preventable and often reversible. I just read this statistic and it just broke my heart. This is the prediction into the future, that 33% of our male children and 39% of our female children born after 2000 will develop diabetes. 50% of African American and Hispanic children will develop diabetes. Very sad. So we need to educate. We need to educate. So the good news is type 2 diabetes doesn't have to be part of your life or your family's life. There's something you can do about it. Here again, Seventh-day Adventists. Look at that. The first one, the first graph, these are non-vegetarians. They had 7% of the population had diabetes. Semi-vegetarians, these are people who ate meat maybe 2-3 times a week. 6% of the population had diabetes. Pesco-vegetarians, the green ones, they were eating fish. And they had 4.8, about 5% diabetes. But lacto-ovo-vegetarians and vegans, they had less than half of the incidence of diabetes. So switching to a plant-based diet protects you not only from heart disease, from high blood pressure, but also from type 2 diabetes. What happened to researchers studied people who were vegetarians at one time but went back to eating meat. They're called lapsed vegetarians. Well, their heart disease shot up to 146%. Their stroke went up to 152%. Diabetes went up to 166%. And they gained weight. Their weight more than doubled. After 12 years after they transitioned from a vegetarian diet to a meat-eating diet, their life expectancy decreased by 3.5 years. Okay, we're almost done here. I want to tell you about this 65-year-old Native American who had been on insulin for type 2 diabetes for 27 years. He had no hope. The doctor told him, American Indians are generally predisposed for diabetes. You just have to live with it. He had excruciating nerve pain in his legs and feet, and he watched Uprooting the Leading Causes of Death by Dr. Greger with his granddaughter. And his granddaughter convinced him, Grandpa, why don't you try this plant-based diet? He said it wasn't easy. He had to travel 50 miles to the grocery store to buy fresh vegetables and fruit. However, he did it. In less than 2 weeks, he turned his life around. He started feeling better, and as time went on, he lost 30 pounds. He was no longer diabetic, was on 0 insulin. His nerve pain improved. And he said, I feel young again. And I'm grateful my granddaughter stopped seeing me as a sick old man. Isn't that precious? Yes. Those are the kind of stories you can have. You can experience this, and you can motivate others with this. I thought this would be interesting to see. Where is our saturated fat coming from? The average American eats 2,400 chickens, 27 pigs, 11 cows, 4,500 fish, 30 sheep, and 80, I guess, turkeys. Turkeys per year, according to the vegetarian calculator. Now that's where the saturated fat, the cholesterol, and all those fats are coming from. I want you to picture yourself at the doctor's office. Your blood pressure is 180 over 140. You're complaining of headaches, dizziness, fatigue due to your high blood pressure. He adds a third medication to the 2 that you already have. You know that's not the answer. Now you'll have more side effects to deal with. What is the answer? The answer is a plant-based diet. Next week, you'll learn how to switch to a plant-based diet if you would like, or slowly take some steps toward it. How to experience the health benefits of lower cholesterol, lower blood sugar, lower blood pressure, and to have more energy. You might be saying, sure, I'd love to follow this program, but it's too hard. I don't have the motivation. Anybody feel like that? You won't? Some of us, yeah, sure. Let's be honest. It's true. Any kind of change is hard, right? But I want to tell you the good news. In the very beginning, long before one research study was published on the benefits of a plant-based diet, there was a creator, and he gave to humanity the optimal diet. And right here, it is the diet we've been talking about. And God said, behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat, which means food. Thou shalt eat the herb of the field. Later on, as people were living shorter because of sin, he also gave them vegetables because those are good for disease prevention, especially cancer, different things. You know, the interesting thing is this diet is the same diet I've been talking to you about, that the scientists have been discovering for the last 30, 40 years. Don't you think that the one who created us in his image knows what's the best fuel for our body and lifestyle? You know, you might still be thinking, sure, I'd love to try it, but I don't have the willpower. Well, let me tell you, if you need motivation, if you need the power to change, here it is. God says, the Creator says, your Creator says, behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is there anything too hard for me? Nothing is too hard for him. He can help you with your problems, with your diet. I mean, I have to ask him every day because I like to eat. And sometimes I eat too much and I sit too much. Even though I exercise at my age, it's very easy to gain weight. But I have to ask him, can you help me to have self-control? And he answers. And it feels very good. So thank you so much for patiently listening.